There's an account that I follow on Facebook that adds a great deal to my life. And that's a lot to say given the enormity of the content and the type of content that you usually find when you get onto that platform. The photographer, Peter Turnley, an American by birth, a French citizen by choice, shares his unique black and white photography along with his reflections every day. Through his pictures and his words, he captures the depth of the human experience, whether that's in a conflict region, anywhere around the globe, and he's had extensive experience photographing there, or idyllic delights of his daily movement through Paris, the city of his love. His words and his photographs go hand in hand. Without saying as much, the words he wrote this past Thursday precisely summarize the reason his work is saturated with meaning. First, he reflects on the great French Impressionist painters who've deeply impacted his life and his work. Then, he moves out to envelop everyone and everything in this profound moment, proving to us that it's bigger, more universal than one slice or one period in history. He continues this intentional observation and awareness until he can make this statement: I go forward trying to exist in the marvel of the present around me. This is the sequence from which he has chosen to live and create. So let's see what he did there. First, he allows himself time to be inspired by something that is good and beautiful, something outside of himself. Then, he broadens the impact of the beauty, the mystery, the work of the masters in this case, to include everyday experiences such as the one that accompanies this particular post. A picture of a man sitting, reading a newspaper with his coffee in a Parisian restaurant. He then actually envelops everyone and everything into this profound moment, proving to us that even we are included. He continues and repeats this intentional observation and awareness until he now, nearly 5 decades later, intuitively knows the heart and the relationships of his urban fellow citizens. He captures them exquisitely every day with his photography. And I wish I could just put a picture of that photography up on the screen, but he has very specific copyright regulations, so I'm not going to do that. You're just going to have to follow him as well. Peter Turnley. First, coming to the first point. First, a concrete reality or mystery is acknowledged and appreciated. Then, it's expanded and repeated until it includes everything and everyone. This is transformative. If we grasp it, if we live by it. Is Mr. Turnley's life less complicated than ours? Is he one of the very few people who is extraordinarily gifted? Is the fact that he lives in a world-class city the key? Or could it be his intentionality, his carefully protected expectations, and his ability to find beauty in the ordinary? I'm convinced that he has chosen to live his life with the utmost awareness and intention. I also believe we can learn basic principles from people by observing their work and reading their writing. So let's go further. Before we can get to a place of delving into Turnley's first, then, until, we need to explore potential barriers, often coming to us in the form of expectations that we have of life. Everyone has many expectations. We'll look at only 3 this morning. We have expectations of ourselves. We have expectations of the present moment. and we have expectations of God. What do you expect from yourself? If you're unsure, just think about the internal messages that keep going through your head. What are those messages that you're incessantly telling or asking yourself? Am I doing enough? Will they notice? See, there I go again. I just blew that. Man, that makes me so mad. Why is he looking at me like that? I hope I can just get through this. I hate this pressure. And on and on and on. Even though we as a culture have been nurtured at the table of positive affirmations, we still most frequently say things like that. Or things like, I'm too short, I'm too fat, too tall, too slow, too conspicuous, too invisible, too unfocused. I'm too young and inexperienced to make any contribution. I'm aging and I have less to offer. I can't compete anymore. I'm overworked and I'm overwhelmed. I'm not happy. Simply put, these kinds of messages create problems, which we then need to solve, robbing us of the chance to reflect on something outside of ourselves, something bigger than ourselves. We create crises, large or small, which then pull a curtain across the present moment of wonder. Father Richard Rohr says, if we can't be positively present right now without creating a problem, nothing new is ever going to happen. Speaking of the present moment, what is your expectation of the present? Or is that a question that you find hard to answer because it's just never on your mind? We do have expectations of the present, but we usually aren't aware of it. But here's a clue. Before I went on vacation, I made an appointment with a massage therapist because I was having some pain in my shoulder and in my neck, and I just wanted that looked after. So I actually wanted to know what was causing that. And when I asked at one point during the massage, the therapist abruptly switched the music to gurgling water rather than piano music, and she said, "Your mind is too active." I got the point, and I didn't really need to know that at that point. I didn't need to understand anything, to solve anything, to add to the effort of this moment. That was her job. My job was simply to be present. It was a real feat, I'll tell you, to actually allow that gurgling water to sort of get into my mind and have her work on my feet and not really notice it. Minister and licensed clinical social worker Nancy Collier writes in Psychology Today that despite our cultural obsession with mindfulness, we're only paying attention to the present moment about 50% of the time. That said, Collier writes, we miss out on half of our life, our attention somewhere other than where we are. We are somewhere other than we are. Richard Rohr says, we live most of our life in the past or in the future. The present always seems boring and not enough. To get ourselves engaged, we will often create a problem to resolve, and then another and another, end quote. If we're honest, that kind of sums up our thought pattern, doesn't it? The present doesn't seem to be moving quickly enough, or it's moving far too quickly for our liking. We clearly see things we hope and wish for in the future, and then we worry about what has happened, what we said, how we handled a situation in the past. So we tend to put every morsel of our past and our present, or pardon me, and our future lives under the microscope so that we can analyze and then fret. Most of the time, it's unconscious. You will notice your lack of attention to the present when you realize how hard it is to really focus on it. The inability to live in the present, to be consciously alert to what we see, smell, hear, feel, touch, and think robs us of the opportunity to see the present moment as a slice within this grand mosaic and mystery, which includes everything from the grandeur of the mountains to every piece of art and music ever to be created, the complexity of the planet Earth, and the divine in everything. Our compulsive obsession disconnects us from the present and from the bigger picture. Since it does, we can't begin to connect with the first, then, and we can't even hope to reach until. How do our expectations about God help or hinder our ability to truly enter into life as it invites us? And now we come back to one sentence from our scripture text. There's a call for alertness and vigilance, since the text speaks about a master-servant relationship. But then there's a twist in that story. We expect a different outcome. Somehow we expect the servants to grow tired and weary, become lax, sloppy. But let's say they're really engaged and eager. They stay alert, they fulfill their tasks, and they have everything in order when the master returns from his honeymoon, no less. We somehow expect his response to be the same, regardless of how they've been performing. Stern, exacting, demanding a rundown of affairs during his absence, and somehow grouchy because now his honeymoon is over. In light of how we see God as a stern and demanding master, how unusual is this sentence? He'll put on an apron, sit them at the table, and serve them a meal, sharing his wedding feast with them. How is that possible? A master donning work attire? A master asking to serve his employees? A master inviting mere servants to his wedding feast? Exactly that is what this story is presenting. It intentionally is told to jolt the hearers to attention, because all of them have expected exactly what we would have expected: a disengaged, demanding, ruthless boss. What are your expectations of God? If you're really honest, do you make comments like, I hope God didn't hear that, or something like that? I know people who basically apologize for cursing when clergy is around. Yeah. But in this text, God is clearly depicted as warm, engaging, giving, creating an atmosphere that is filled with fun and celebration and laughter. Can you see how our expectations of ourselves, our limited ability to actually live in the present, and our warped view of God would severely cramp our ability to first allow ourselves to be captured by the goodness and truth and beauty of something beyond and outside of ourselves? Then, to universalize from that moment, to include the goodness and the truth and the beauty that rests in the present, until our realization eventually ricochets back to include ourselves and our fellow humans. And that quotes Richard Rohr almost to a word. I see these three concepts as three concentric circles. The inner circle, the first, is being able to take in beauty or joyful surprise. The next circle, then, is an expansion of that joy to include everything, all the beauty and vibrancy and blessing that surrounds us constantly. The final and biggest circle, the until, represents repetition, until we truly begin to see ourselves and our fellow humans as integral participants in the joy that is meant for us all. And who wouldn't want to live in the present moment if that's the case? A present in which we don't need to create a problem to feel alive or to feel worthy or to feel like a hero. Each of us is worthy, is a hero in our own right. We simply need to spend more time looking for the beauty and meaning, focusing on that beauty intently. And after we internalize this moment of joy, fulfillment, opportunity, and beauty, to rinse and repeat, make it a lifestyle, the sequence of first, then, until. If you have trouble believing this or seeing value in it, I urge you to focus on this sentence. He'll put on an apron, sit us at the table, and serve us a meal, sharing his wedding feast with us. We are here to learn awareness and appreciation of the present moment until we, like the photographer Peter Turnley, intuitively know the hearts and the relationships of our fellow urban dwellers in this city that we care about deeply. May we experience this reality.